He knew his name. That's what strikes me about this whole parable that Jesus tells. The rich man knew Lazarus' name. He wasn't an unknown person. He wasn't a stranger. He can't say, oh my gosh, I didn't know anyone was there. He not only knew, but he knew the guy's name. Lazarus. Father Abraham, send Lazarus. He knew the man's name and did nothing. He didn't see beyond his own comfort zone. He knew that there was someone out there. He knew who was out there. And yet, that didn't penetrate within. It didn't break down the walls. It didn't get through the fences he had set up. It didn't break into that comfort zone that he had established for himself. He knew his name and did nothing. And Jesus is very clear to paint us a very intricate picture of this man's life, and maybe why, even though he knew the name and knew who was there, he couldn't feel anything towards him. This was a rich man, he said, who dressed in purple garments and fine linen. And that's important because we know that to make a purple garment, the kind of ink and dye that you needed back in Jesus' day, made it very expensive to make that. So only those who were in the upper crust of society could afford a purple garment and fine linen. And he dined sumptuously every day. Thanksgiving dinner every day. He had more food than he knew what to do with, so much so that Jesus points out that Lazarus longs to eat from the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. Remember, we're in days before refrigeration. So what happened? There was so much food left over that this man couldn't eat it all. And it was thrown out. And Lazarus would have done anything just to have some of that food for himself. So Jesus paints us this picture in his parable of a man who is so comforted and so comfortable that he can't see beyond his own life. He has feathered his nest in such a way that he feels no pain, and he feels nothing towards other people. That he doesn't understand the kind of pain, the kind of hunger, the kind of destitution that Lazarus is experiencing, because he has so insulated himself from the rest of the world. And he may have done that without even knowing. That automatically, he just little by little built up his fortune and slowly closed himself off from the world around him. And that, I think, is what's most damning about his situation today. Because he saw that there was a need there, and he did not respond to it. His heart was closed to love. His heart was closed to mercy, and therefore he was unable to receive love. He was unable to receive mercy, because it was closed already from the beginning in giving that. And so there comes that line that always troubled me as a younger guy. I would hear that question at the end. Father Abraham, send Lazarus to my brothers so that they don't fall into the same mistakes that I did, so that they reform and change their lives and aren't lost forever. Send them. And Abraham's reply puzzled me. No, they have Moses and the prophets, and if they won't listen to them, then they're not going to be able to listen to someone who rises from the dead. And I thought Abraham was crazy. Abraham, you're crazy. If someone rose from the dead, that would make an impression on me. That would definitely catch my attention. I would definitely be converted. I would know something's going on. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, no, I think Abraham is right. I think Abraham is right because if we're not in the habit of seeing God at work, then even should he do something great, we're not going to notice it. It's going to go over our heads or be off the radar. Let me give you an example. It's like being in a darkened room, or in a movie theater, or waking up in the middle of the night, and someone throws the light switch on, or you walk outside into the brightness after being in the movie. Your eyes don't adjust to the light right away. And in fact, it kind of stings, and it kind of hurts them, because they're used to being in the dark. They're used to being in the shadows. And so when the light shines on them, we turn from the light. We close our eyes because it's painful. The light isn't trying to hurt us. The light isn't trying to do bad things to us. The light is just being the light. But because we have conditioned ourselves to be in the darkness for some time, now the light hurts. And so it is in our spiritual life. If we're not used to looking upon God, if we're not used to practicing our faith, spending time with the Scriptures, praying to God and developing that relationship, if we're not used to those things, then when God is at work in our lives, we don't see it. We're incapable of registering that. Or we can explain it away. Oh, well, that must have been something else. That must have been something crazy. We all know the story of Ebenezer Scrooge. When the ghost appeared to him, his first thought was, it's just an upset stomach. I ate something bad and now I'm hallucinating. Even though someone from the dead appeared to him, he was able to wash it away. If your brothers are not already rooted in their faith, if they're not listening to the prophets, if they're not listening to the commandments and living their faith, then even if someone from the dead comes back to them, it's not going to make an impression. And so as we hear these words today, it strikes us and reminds us how important it is to have that ongoing, continual relationship with God. It's important for our salvation. Because when this man met his end, he was unable to attain salvation because he had no idea what it looked like. A few weeks ago, I preached about how God wants to save every one of us and how he will do anything to bring us into his kingdom and how he will bend over backwards to save us even in the 11th hour. But that can only work if we recognize who he is when he reaches out his hand in those last moments to save us. If we have been living a life ignoring Jesus, if we've been living a life where faith has such a distant part of who we are, then even in the end, when the Lord throws us the life preserver, it will do no good because we have no idea who is talking to us. We have no idea who that face is. And perhaps the brightness will blind us that we turn away our eyes in the moment we need salvation the most. Ultimately, every day becomes a practice session for the last moment. That I practice today to see Jesus. I practice today to know who God is and how he's working in my life. I practice today coming out of the shadows so that in that final moment, when everything else is gone and it's just me and God, I won't be afraid of him and I won't turn away from him because his brightness and his holiness hurt me. I'm used to standing in that light. I'm used to having a conversation with that voice. I'm used to being with him. So Jesus challenges us today to unfeather our nests, as it were, to get out of that safety zone maybe that we have built up, or that comfort zone that insulates us not just from the world, but also from God. That we look to those ways, maybe it's comfortable being in a temptation, or being in a sin, or being in a vice, that I'm a little selfish, or I don't practice charity as I should, or whatever. It's a little comfortable being there. But the more we allow that to happen in our lives, the more it separates us from God, where we stop recognizing Him. And so every day becomes a day to practice virtue. And ultimately, that's what this rich man never did. He had the opportunity to practice charity, to practice mercy, to build a relationship, to be kind, and he never took the opportunity to do that, and in the end, he couldn't see salvation when it was reaching its hand out to him. So we, as we come here today, we have the privilege of hearing the Scriptures, of receiving the sacrament, being filled with everything that we need, and now we have to ask ourselves, what do I do with it? What do I do with what God has given me so that I can put it into practice and be ready for the day of eternity? That's the question I'd like you to reflect upon this week. When did you become Catholic? Baptism, entrance into the church at some point? Was that as an infant? Was it as an adult? When did you become a person of faith? And as we've grown up in that faith, sometimes we have gotten comfortable in certain things of our faith, and we don't always stretch ourselves in our faith. And so this becomes a good opportunity to ask ourselves and to reflect upon the question, how am I living my Catholic faith? And how am I practicing it? Am I all in, or am I too comfortable? Think about that this week. I've asked one of our parishioners already to reflect upon that question. And next week, instead of having announcements at the end of Mass, I've asked him to share his reflection with us, to give us his witness story. How has he lived his faith? How has he maybe broken through that comfort zone? It will be good to hear from a brother parishioner, from each other, how we meet Jesus Christ and how we live that faith. As we come before the Lord today, he challenges us to know him, to know his name, and to call out to him in the practice of all of those virtues that begin to acclimate us to the light, so that when the light shines, we will not turn away from it, but we, with Lazarus, will be welcomed into the halls of eternity.